Tell
Hi,
us
Beverly.
the backstory. Why were these laws introduced?
Well, there was a review several years ago in Scotland over the way in which the legal system should deal with hate crimes. That is to say, crimes that are against people because of aspects of their person. We've had a long time in Britain, not just in Scotland, laws which have prevented people stirring up hatred against people because of their racial background or their nationality. The proposal that was put forward was this should be expanded to other groups in our society who have protected characteristics. So, for example, a new law that's been part of this is to prevent stirring up hatred on the basis of people's age or disability or sexuality or transgender community. They're all protected now with this new criminal offence of people stirring up hatred against them, which has existed for race for many years before.
Yeah. So J.K. Rowling, as I mentioned, provocatively dared police to arrest her because she has some very strong transgender views. They don't seem to be biting when it comes to this prolific and sort of well-known author.
No, indeed, and the police have confirmed that they will not arrest her under this law for the statements that she made. Because the law, if you look at it, the test that's required to prove that you're being stirring up hatred against someone because of their characteristic, it has to be threatening or abusive. Now, that's a concept that's got a long tradition in Scots law. And essentially what it means is that you've caused somebody fear and alarm by your actions or your words. So you can either act in a way or you can communicate to someone, but it's got to be threatening or abusive. And also, interestingly, this law inbuilds a freedom of expression defence, and it actually explicitly says that you've got the right to be offensive, shocking, or disturbing in your expression, which I think if you look at J.K. Rowling's communications online, the police probably viewed that it fell more in being offensive or shocking rather than actually creating fear and alarm for individuals that might be part of that community. Which is, remember, that's the test that has to be proven.
Yeah, interesting. So, Nick, who decides whether the person was alarmed or offended or threatened?
Well, the legal test is one, would a reasonable person think that that would cause fear and alarm? So it's not your own feelings or my own feelings in and of itself. It's got to be a standard that somebody looking from outside, a reasonable person would say, well, yeah, that is likely to cause fear and alarm. So the police are the initial regulators of that, as in all criminal law. The police have to determine if somebody breaks that, arrest that person if they think that's been met. But the difficulty now, or the new development, maybe not a difficulty, but a new thing they're going to have to deal with is this freedom of expression thing. So if somebody makes a statement that perhaps looks that it could cause fear and alarm, the police also have to judge, well, what's the context of that? Is that trying to shock people and offend them rather than go down the route of fear and alarm in the reasonable person test?
Yeah, an interesting distinction. Why aren't, I mean, J.K. Rowling also makes the point about women not being included in these sort of groups. Why not? Or are they going
to... Yeah, so that is a controversy of this law, that one group that's not protected in this hate crime law is women. Now, the Scottish Government, when we're introducing this law through the Parliament, which happened a few years ago, stated that because women are the majority of the population, they're not a minority group, there needs to be a specific law that looks at that. So there was a discussion, a working group to look at another specific law about crimes against women, and Scotland could introduce a misogyny law to make misogyny a crime, which would be quite new in the world, actually. Not many countries have that. But also there's a possibility of introducing sex as a protected characteristic in this context as well. There is a broader debate around that, including amongst feminist groups. For example, if you aggravate a crime because of a characteristic, so say somebody's assaulted because they're disabled, then in Scots law that can be an aggravator. So you can be done for assault, which is a crime, but there'd be additional sentence because you hit somebody because of their disability. Now, are crimes committed against people because they're women? Now, there's a debate that maybe most sexual offences are crimes against women in every circumstance. So if you introduced an aggravator for just some and not all of them, then that could cause issues in terms of when would you determine that something was a specific crime against women. So those sort of questions were why the Scottish Government felt it should be dealt with another law, which I think is going to be proposed in the next few months.
Interesting. Nick, of course, it's no secret that across the world there is this kind of concern about being too woke, being too protective, not being able to express yourself, tasteless jokes. Do you think in your mind this law compromises free speech?
I don't think it does, in the sense that hate crime is not a new concept in Scots law, or indeed any legal system, including Australia, that people can be prosecuted for words. Now, that can be controversial, and some people have the philosophical belief that you shouldn't be prosecuted for things that you say. But most societies have made a compromise on that. So hate crime against people because of their racial background, their nationality, has long been a crime in Britain. To extend that to other groups, sexuality, disability, age and so on, I don't think that is compromising freedom of expression, because I don't think that you should be hateful in your language. And remember, hateful means being threatening or abusive to someone that could cause them fear and alarm.
Yeah.
I think being threatening and abusive to somebody because of their characteristics isn't a good expression of free expression. I think that could be limited. But even if people are uncomfortable about that, there is a defence of freedom of expression in the law. Remember, I said you can be offensive or shocking, which many, say a comedian that wants to be shocking with their material, they would be covered by that. So free expression, I think, is important, but we've always looked at limitations, particularly when hatred is being whipped up against particular groups.
So, we've talked about thousands of complaints already being received about these new laws to police. How do people feel? Is it largely supported? People feel, as well as people being described as being woke, there is a big increase in rather horrible language being used against people, particularly minority groups.
And people wanting the right to use that horrible language. I think society, as in across the world, on many issues, is divided on it. And it got a big majority in the Parliament. Nearly all the political parties, apart from the Conservative Party in the Scottish Parliament, voted in favour of it, because it's that extension of protecting groups. There has been quite a lot of misinformation as well on it, about, like the point you made earlier about being woke, and if you're offended you can complain to the police and all that, which is not true. That's not what the law says. However, that might cause people just to contact the police because they want to make a point about this law. I think it will settle down. But I think the police's statement after J.K. Rowling's social media communications, I think, was important, because that did show that freedom of expression still exists. But the criminal test is a high one, but an important one to protect groups from facing threatening or abusive language.
Yeah, I think, yes, without necessarily intending to, she gave them a really good example. Nick, appreciate it. You've really helped explain it a lot to us.
Thanks very much, Beverly.
Take care.